What if I told you that on the brutal southern plains of 19th century America, the women weren't just tending fires and caring for children but were sometimes more feared than the warriors themselves? What if the blood-soaked stories of raids, revenge, and survival we grew up hearing quietly erased the women who shaped those wars? Behind the dust, the hoofbeats, and the clash of steel, there were women who stood their ground. Women who defended their homes. Women who carried the weight of life and the burden of violence when survival demanded it. This isn't the version of history most of us were taught. And that's the point. Because when you peel back the myths of the frontier, you don't just find warriors on horseback. You find mothers, daughters, leaders, fighters, people forged by fear, love, loss, and the endless horizon. So what was really happening behind the battle lines? Today, we uncover a truth that will challenge the way you think about gender, warfare, and survival on the plains and the people who refuse to break beneath it. Long before Texas settlers pushed west, the Comanche were the undisputed masters of the southern plains, their power built on speed, horses, and a way of life always on the move. Their world wasn't anchored by cities or fences. It was tied to the buffalo, the wind, and the saddle, a culture shaped by motion, precision, and survival. But strength didn't belong only to the warriors riding across the horizon. It lived within the camps, within the firelight, within the hands of the women who kept the nation alive. Daily life was never easy. It was relentless, physical, demanding. Women raised children, cooked meals, gathered roots and berries, and tended to horses that were as vital as breath itself. They packed and unpacked teepees again and again, sometimes traveling miles every few days, rebuilding life wherever the tribe chose to stop. They scraped and cured buffalo hides into clothing and shelter, sewing, repairing, supplying, turning raw land into home. They were the quiet architecture of the nation, the backbone that never broke. And when the threat of war rose, when riders vanished into the plains and danger followed close behind, the women did not retreat into the shadows. They adapted. They protected. They prepared the wounded. They guarded the children. And when survival demanded more, sometimes they took on roles no history book expected them to. Because on the southern plains, strength was not defined by gender. It was defined by endurance and the will to keep going, no matter the cost. Unlike what many history books suggest, Comanche women did not always stand quietly behind the men. Yes, most warriors were male. That part is true. But when the line between life and death narrowed, women stepped forward too. They picked up weapons. They defended their homes. They avenged the people they loved, not for glory, but because survival demanded it. Comanche girls learned to ride almost as soon as they could stand. Riding wasn't a man's skill. It was a Comanche skill. Balance, control, fearlessness. These were the instincts every child grew into, boy or girl. So when danger swept across the plains, there was no audience, no bystanders. Anyone capable of fighting, fought. Women rode alongside the men. They guarded the camp. They protected the children. And when violence found them, they didn't break. They answered it. In a culture where honor, vengeance, and survival were woven tightly together, some women gained reputations every bit as fierce as the men, and sometimes even more feared. Their strength didn't erase their roles as mothers, daughters, or caretakers. It existed beside those roles. It came from love, loyalty, loss, and the unyielding belief that their people must endure. These are the stories history rarely paused to tell. But they were there, written in hoofprints, firelight, and the wide-open sky of the southern plains. Picture a Comanche camp after a raid. The wind moves quietly through the grass. Horses stand tethered nearby. Weapons rest on the ground. Bundles of supplies lie stacked in the dust. And sometimes, there are captives. Inside this world, women were far more than caretakers. They were the rhythm keepers of Comanche life, the ones who healed the wounded, prepared food, guided children, tended animals, and helped shape decisions that affected the entire band. They protected the home front. They embodied order. and when the moment demanded it, they also took part in punishment and retribution. Some 19th century accounts describe Comanche women beating or tormenting captives, stories that shocked even hardened frontier settlers who thought they had already seen the worst the plains could create. But to the Comanche, this was not thoughtless cruelty. It was bound tightly to grief, vengeance, and the duty to honor the dead. Because in a world where raids took lives, shattered families, and threatened the tribe's survival, everyone carried the weight of response. Justice, harsh as it was, did not belong only to the warriors. It existed as part of a cultural code, where loyalty, loss, and survival intertwined so closely that the line between pain and duty almost disappeared. In these darkest moments, every member of the tribe had a place. Every action had meaning. And the story of Comanche women was not one of silence, but one of presence powerful, complex, and impossible to erase. To understand Comanche women, you have to see them in three forms at once. They were creators of daily life, rising before sunrise, shaping raw land into shelter, turning buffalo into clothing, food, and tools, sustaining the tribe through relentless labor that never truly ended. Their hands built the world the warriors returned to. They were also protectors, the steady line between safety and chaos. When danger approached, they stepped forward without hesitation. They guarded children. They watched the horizon. They kept order when fear threatened to take hold. And when survival or honor demanded it, they became warriors riding into violence not for glory, but because their families, their people, and their future depended on it. In the Comanche world, courage was not defined by gender. It was defined by endurance, by will, by the refusal to bend beneath the weight of an unforgiving land. Many of their names were never written down. Many of their stories faded before they could be recorded. But their presence shaped the fate of the plains just as powerfully as the warriors whose legends filled the history books. They were builders. They were shields. They were fighters. And without them, the story of the Comanche and of the American plains would be incomplete. So, when you imagine a Comanche warrior, don't just see a lone horseman charging across the prairie with a spear in hand. Look again. Picture the woman beside him. The woman who raised the children. The woman who tended the fires, kept the tribe fed, and held the community together when the world felt fragile and uncertain. Picture the woman who guarded the camp when danger moved across the horizon, who stayed awake through the night listening for hoofbeats in the dark. Picture the woman who, when the moment demanded it, would fight, and yes, sometimes kill, to protect everything and everyone she loved. She was not a bystander in history. She was part of its beating heart. Their story reminds us that resilience has many faces. It is quiet and loud, gentle and fierce. It exists in the hands that sew and cook, and in the hands that grip a weapon when survival leaves no other choice. And real history, is rarely as simple as the stories we tell about it. It lives in the spaces we forget, in the names that were never written down, in the lives of women who shaped the fate of the plains just as surely as the men who rode into legend. So remember them not as shadows behind the warriors, but as warriors of a different kind. Mothers, protectors, fighters, strong enough to carry both life and loss across the endless horizon. If this story made you rethink what you thought you knew about history, then stay with us here at Native Legends Uncovered, where the past isn't simplified, it's explored with respect, depth, and truth. What other native legends do you believe the world has forgotten? Stories of courage. Stories of loss and resilience. Stories carried through generations, but rarely written down. Share your thoughts in the comments because your curiosity helps keep these voices alive. And if you want to keep discovering the past as it was truly lived, not just the version preserved in textbooks, consider subscribing. Think of it less as following a channel, and more as joining a journey across time, across cultures, and across the human experience told with care, dignity, and the spirit of documentary storytelling. Because every legend matters. Every voice deserves to be remembered. And together, we can make sure these stories are never lost again.